because, as the Honorable Minister said, the challenge hasn't been writing the policy. In the one of 2008, actually, when we studied it, we found that only 30% was implemented. What particular lessons did you learn on implementation discipline that you are carrying to this particular one?
Thank you. The big lesson we pick is that, one, we should be able to move from working in isolation and work together as a government. The industrial policy, it is a national industrial policy. It is not for Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives alone. It's for the entire government. And therefore, we really need to work together. Even under the 2008, it had been envisaged that there was need to have an interministerial coordination forum, but it didn't happen. So we've really picked it, and also through working with the National Development Plan, with the national structured under different levels. At the apex, we have the cabinet. It's going to be an interministerial subcommittee, which will be chaired by the minister responsible for industry. And we think this will be able to turn things around, and maybe after 2026, the story will be different.
Super, super. I will come now to the gentleman who's heading the institution that is mandated by government to implement the outcomes of this policy. Dr. Berundi, Ugandans need results in terms of what the minister and the policy is defining. How, first of all, first tell us, I'll also start on a slow pace. I wouldn't want to bombard you with a big one. What's the role the UDC is going to play in particular, so that Ugandans know and they start to tick boxes as you move? The role you're going to play in implementing this policy, and in particular in working with the private sector.
Thank you, moderator. You'll also allow me to first say congratulations, Honorable Minister, for ending this term on a high note. And I chose my words very carefully this term, because I believe we may have many more terms. And also to UNDP for supporting the right cause. First of all, if we talk about UDC, UDC is formed for the sole purpose of industrializing this country and socio-economic transformation, and that's what the UDC Act is all about. When it comes to the role, specifically to respond to your question, UDC's role is basically to intervene in key strategic areas where we feel the private sector has not moved as fast. Our role is to go in, de-risk those areas, and allow private sector to take root. Our role is catalytic. It's not meant to go in and stay in there. I'll just give an example. With the intervention in Soroti, with Soroti Fruit Factory, today we are attracting many people willing to invest in Soroti Fruit Factory, but also 2 different private sector initiatives are already taking lead to implement fruit processing facilities in the same region. To me, that's the catalytic role that the government plays in this whole agenda, not necessarily to go in and be big players all the time, but allow the private sector to take root. And that's the role we want to play through the implementation of this policy. And when you look at the UDC strategic plan and the policy, we fit very well in the policy in terms of the strategic areas whether it's agro-processing as highlighted in the policy, that is our core entry point at the moment, or whether it is with the, what they call extractive industry. On our side in the strategic plan, we have mineral beneficiation. So basically, we are in line with the agenda as the policy defines, and we'll continue to play our catalytic role in agro-industrialization and also in the mineral beneficiation space. We'll also, when you look at the core principles within the policy, utilization of local raw materials, job creation, improving trade balance position, developing local entrepreneurship and so on, are also in line with our key principles as Uganda Development Corporation. So we'll go ahead and implement the policy and support the implementation of the policy in specific areas, whether it's coffee processing as highlighted, we already have interventions in that area. Whether it's tea processing, we already have interventions in that area. Fruit processing, we go ahead and in grain processing, cotton, and so on and so forth.
In particular, I would like you to update Ugandans on the situation at Soroti Fruit Factory, because that factory has been in the media and everywhere so much. Bring us to book on how to speed on how this factory in particular is performing, but specifically the lessons you are learning from there in order to promote agro-industrialization in Uganda, which is the major anchor of this policy.
Thank you very much. Soroti Fruit Factory, as commonly known as SOFT, was an initiative of government of Uganda together with a development partner, COICA, to be specific. And the whole idea was, can we process the fruits that are produced in this area? And there had been so many government programs encouraging farmers to grow more fruits, but the market was not clear. So an initiative was started in that direction. Today, as we speak, moving fast forward, the factory is functional, the factory is running, the product is on the market. So you will see the Teju brand. So when they were turning the industrial policy, I saw at the back the Teju brand as well. So there is the Teju brand on the market.
I wish you brought some here and people had a taste.
It's fast peaking in the market. Our challenge now is to deal with our competitors because it's fast eating into their market share.
Oh. So you are worried of the competitors' survival?
Survival.
Okay.
So our process is now moving. We need to strengthen it a little more. When we started, we realized that we could consume only about 10% of the fruits in that region during a good fruiting season, meaning that you can interest the private sector. And we've managed to do that because now 2 factories are coming up in the Soroti Industrial Park, both of them for processing fruits. But we have also got private sector inquiries on how they can partner with us to improve our factory. We have an expansion plan, but we also have a plan to address the other emerging industries around the fruit processing. So it is quite interesting. In terms of learning, we've learned a lot that doing business in a public sector setting is quite a challenge. Sometimes you have to go and get accreditation from PPDA for you to buy fruits from farmers. So these kind of processes sometimes delay the speed at which you want to move. but at the same time you have to fulfill both the public sector requirements and the private sector needs. You have to advertise if you want to buy inputs to the industry. And it's possible your competitor will just buy all the sugar, industrial sugar out, and you have, by the time you finish your procurement process, you'll have no sugar to buy. So,
what do you think should be the way forward on
the
that
way
particular
forward
one?
on this is really, we are not saying that we shouldn't be under a regulated environment, but we should have special guidelines within the PPD Act, for example, for public enterprises. That will help ease a lot of these needs. If not, we need a special law, like our neighbors in Kenya, they have a special law for the public enterprises. So these are some of the challenges that we find. Also, the speed of financing from government systems through the budgets and so on. Sometimes it slows the process a little. But I think by and large, the facility is up and running. It may still be having a few challenges, but those will be corrected as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you. I will come to Daniel Berundi, the Executive Director for UMA, the Uganda Manufacturers Association. First of all, Daniel, Uganda runs a policy of private sector led. In everything, private sector is leading. Did you play a role in the formulation of this policy? Did you feel that you played a role, and what role was that in particular? And also in the same bit, after you've told us the role, how do you think this policy is going to help you as private sector to harness value addition in particular and inclusive growth in general?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. And first of all, just in line with what everyone has said, I think hearty congratulations are due to the Ministry and the Honorable Minister for a job well done in delivering this. And I'm one of those who believe the runway for takeoff was set when the Honorable Minister and her team insisted on Bubu as a starting point. Because with Bubu, we've set the first steps to implementing the industrial policy and strategy, and I believe we can only go further with this. To your question, what role did we play? I must say we are very grateful that this time we did play a very strong role in the development of this policy. We were not only consulted, but we were part of the teams that were reviewing the documents. We did review the performance of the previous policy and the weaknesses therein, and provided significant input into determining what to focus on as we move forward. If you've paid critical attention to the targets that have been set, several of them are manufacturing specific, which is testament to the fact that we were part of the process, and we would like to thank the ministry and indeed the team in industry for ensuring that this happened. As far as what benefits do we see accruing from the policy as we move forward, I think one of the key positives around this policy and its attendant strategy is that there is a linkage between the policy and the National Development Plan. Because as government has moved to program-based budgeting, there is definitely supposed to be that link, because then that's what ensures funding for the policy implementation process. And that is a first step that is a mark in the right direction. Two is that the focus on agro-industrialization speaks to the economy as is, that 68% of our citizens are actively engaged in agriculture, and that therefore, as we take charge of an industrial policy that speaks to agro-industrialization, we are touching the lives of the many citizens out there who would otherwise not have a chance to play in the economy that we are in. Third, of course, is that the focus on mineral beneficiation speaks to our export statistics. But as we speak today, you know that gold is up there as one of our biggest exports. But the question is, are we retaining most of the value of this gold we export in Uganda? And this has to be cascaded down. We talk about the iron ore that we have in Moko right now, that we've left in the ground. And this policy then provides the stimulus and the impetus for private sector to then say, wait a minute, there are opportunities here that are untapped that we can take advantage of. So as far as we are concerned, I think the ground is set. Like the English say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The table is set. Now it's time to eat. And as a Manufacturers Association, we are ready to eat. And we've been hungry for a long time.
Great.
Yes.
You can see the minister is leading in the applause. You are speaking music to her ears. Now, quickly, what do you think should be your role in the implementation process? And how do you intend to harness this policy to ensure that we upscale industry in the country?
Our role starts with, has started with being part of the preparation stage, which is good. And right now, we are actively working with the Ministry of Trade in terms of ensuring that the programs that are developed for the financial year are speaking to what manufacturers need, are speaking to what is necessary for industry to grow. So that's the first step, that we are part of the planning process of the ministry, and we've had a seat at the table in this regard. The program-based budgeting has been useful in also helping us understand where we can play and what role we can play. In addition to that, the ministry has not only talked the talk, but has walked the talk, because as I speak today, we have a seat on the boards of several of the institutions that are responsible for implementation of this policy. We've gotten a seat on the board of the Uganda National Bureau of Standards, which is critical in terms of standardization. We are in advanced stages of getting on the board of the Uganda Developmental Corporation, because they speak to what our mandate is. And we are also have a seat on the board of the Uganda Export Promotions Board. And I believe this is the way to go, because if a policy is speaking to manufacturing, industrialization, the people involved in these processes have to have a seat at the table in terms of planning and in terms of monitoring implementation of the plans.
Markets being your biggest problem, do you have also a seat on the board of the export promotions?
Yes, we do. We do have a seat on the board of the export promotions, and we are using it effectively.
Fantastic. Yes. I will go to Veronica, the only lady on the panel. And I don't know, you know, industry tends to be, I think so, Manel in nature. And I have only one lady, but she's right in the center and steadfast. Veronica, at Usia, you have, of course, been promoting the heart and the heartbeat of Uganda's industry. It is in the SMEs. 93% of our farms in Uganda are SMEs. How do you think you are going to position this USIA to ensure that this plan, this policy, the National Industrial Policy, works in consonance with your mandate as USIA to promote the SME industries?
Thank you, Moderator, for the question. And as my earlier brothers had mentioned, I would also like to congratulate the Honorable Minister and Ministry of Trade upon the successful launch of the industrial policy. We at UZIA, we are very glad that this is actually our line ministry. And today's Honorable's keynote speech actually spoke to the true UZIA members and fraternity, in terms of whereby we agree that everybody where they are, it's an industry. We start with the small, and then we start growing, and then as they are growing bigger, we throw them to Daniel, to Uma. But at the moment, we are glad that we are actually doing a lot in terms of this particular industry policy has come in to give us a framework in which we can work in. And we were also part of the constitution of the industrial policy. So we brought in a lot of our members to have focus group discussion and to discuss what went well and what didn't go well. So as you see, we are kind of in the center of this particular policy to implement. How? We are a national-based association, and we have 16 regional offices that reach the grassroots of everybody who is a manufacturer, however small they are, to produce a product that can be exported. We are working with Uganda National Bureau of Standards, and we also sit on the board, and we also have standards that are also maintained. We carry out programs and carry out also in terms of outreach to ensure that everybody understands that once where you produce a product that can actually harness and can be exported out there.
And I would want to know whether, as SME umbrella organization, you are happy with the policy in terms of its focus on the cottage industry, because that's where the Honorable Minister was pointing all of us indirectly, do cottage. But I will have a conversation with her on another for as far as this is concerned. But now in particular you, as Uzia, do you think this policy is strong enough on promotion of cottage industry and also in line with the national MSME policy of 2015? Are you happy with that, and how?
Of course, our MSME policy 2015 is in existence, and we are happy with this one also. There are similarities or synergies that combine the two. They are both talking about job creation. They're both talking about skilling the youth. We're talking about standardization. We're talking about how can we sustain whatever we're producing to harness more products out of value addition. And these are the products that our members are doing. They carry out. And it's very good that on TV, I would like to kind of thank every member of Uganda Small Scale Industries for what they have done in terms of production. They have actually done a lot in terms of value addition, though a lot is needed to harness their products. And there are things that we talk about in terms of both. We have what we call capitalizing on new existing opportunities that are coming up. For instance, the oil and gas. This is where the skills and the gaps that are coming up, but they are ready to fill them up as we're training them to be able to take on. Private sector foundation, SDF programs, all these are initiated to bring up skilled labor that could bring about industrialization in this part.
What about the issue the minister talked about of being so informal, that we are deeply informal, the SMEs, and we need to formalize? What do you think this policy should do to support you to formalize your operations? Or is it necessary anyway?
Yeah, it is very necessary.
Okay.
As a country, we also, even as an association, we are looking at formalizing most of our business. It's our mandate actually. And we have MOUs with URSB. We have tried to do what we call sensitization and awareness sessions. And those of you who watch TV would see all these campaigns going on. We are actually trying to ensure that we work with URA as well to have incentives, because that is the gist of the matter. Most people don't want to formalize because of taxation. But with the incentives that are coming up, we are thinking that more people will be agreeable to be part of it. Even the application of the National Supplier Database is another thing that has come up to kind of bring more people to formalize their business, because everybody wants to be part of the oil and gas and get profit from it.
Thank you. I'll keep you a bit neutralized for now. And I come to Dr. Tangave. Doctor, you are the advisor in chief of the UNDP on matters like this. And you know, in Uganda we are having now, Africa generally, a challenge of changing the structure of our economies. We are exceedingly agrarian, and we've stayed there for so many years. The few farms that try to come out of agriculture, they are jumping into informal services. The industrialization process has been quite slow. From a development perspective, what do you think is the missing element in our industrialization agenda, in particular of Uganda, and how can we use the best practices to get our agenda to another level using this industrial policy?
Okay. Thank you, moderator. Let me also join other panel member conveying our sincere, heartfelt congratulations to the minister and the ministries for successful launch of the National Industrial Policy and the implementation plan. Before our answer your particular question, I also wanted to it's really nice to music to hear what the minister said like 30 minutes back. It was remarkable to listen some of those kind of very emotionally charged, but at the same time very, very strategic response. I was really impressed. The minister in a brief speech highlighted some of the points which I myself wanted to highlight based on the Asian developmental experiences. For example, in her brief remarks, the minister indicated the importance of an integrated framework in moving forward on the industrialization. So that's something I touched upon. So one point I wanted to highlight is the importance of the integrated approach for industrialization, because you need to have a supportive agriculture, trade policy, a supportive investment regime, a supportive infrastructure regime, a supportive innovations, technology policies, if you really want to move forward success in industrialization. So therefore, it's kind of music to listen the minister when he talked about the importance of integrated approach. Not only the kind of the policy here, in the recent years, the government of Uganda recognized the importance of the integrated developmental approach. And that you could see in the difference between the previous development plan and the current development plan. The previous development plans are sectoral oriented, sectoral based. So the government recognized the importance of the integrated approach. So therefore, when they were start preparing for National Development Plan number 3, they kind of consciously made decision to move from a sectoral based planning to the more like a program based planning, program based financing, budgetary framework, so that there is an increased alignment between the planning and the financing framework, between planning the other sectoral framework. So that's kind of my first point. I wanted to say that it's really nice that the government recognizes the importance of an integrated developmental approach, and the government is working on it. Even when I reviewed the 2008 National Industrial Policy and the 2020 National Industrial Policy, I see that one of the major difference in the new policy is that the integrated approach. They recognized the importance of infrastructure development, importance of leveraging the fourth industrial revolution, new technologies, the importance of the leveraging, harnessing the regional trade and other things. So that's my first point I wanted to highlight. The second point, the related point, is of course the broader African continent. Again, if you see Africa broader industrialization, globally as a continent, as a region, they used to account at least 3 or 4% the global manufacturing output in the 70s. Over the last 30-40 years, Africa as a region is somewhat experienced a declining trend in its contribution to the global manufacturing output. And that some experts like Donny Roderick and other people say that African countries is experiencing what they call it a premature industrialization. And that's actually, you see, when you compare Uganda performance, as the minister said, it's again remarkably, I would say, well compared to some of the other African countries. The regional average, Africa average manufacturing contribution to GDP declined from 14% to now is about 10%, as is the regional average. But Uganda, the manufacturing contribution to GDP, it's about 15%. So again, Uganda is one of the selected number of 10, 12, 15 countries is doing remarkably well in the industrialization process in African standard. But again, if you compare with the Asian standard, maybe there is a lot to actually, move forward, and that is the purpose of this new, the 2020 National Industrialization Policy. And so in that regard, if I wanted to actually bring some of the lesson from the Asian experiences, one of the things the Asian country, particularly the East Asian miracle country, is done is that when they designed industrialization policy, they actually positioned it to the more like export-oriented industrialization strategy. So they did not actually aim to industrialization policy to cater the national domestic market. They were, even at the beginning, they were trying to actually cater the rest of the world. So therefore, that's one of the things. It's provided a new opportunity in the context of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So it is actually, it's a really, as our resident representative highlighted, that the important is to, like the way the ministry is moved quickly and positioning itself on the industrialization front, there is a need to move quickly to prepare a national implementation strategy on the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and try to utilize, fully utilize the economic of scale. Now, Uganda manufacturing is not about 43 or 44 million market. It is about now 1.3 billion market, the African market. So in terms of economic scale, in terms of linking, strengthening the regional value chain, so the important is to move forward the export-oriented strategy. My third point, before actually to wrap up, the other thing the Asian countries done is enhancing the productive capacity. Productive capacity is a number of 3 or 4 areas. One is on the skill, whether you have a skilled labor force to support, to move labor from a low productive agriculture sector to the manufacturing sector. So that is one thing I wanted to actually stress there. Yeah. The second point, the connectivity, particularly the regional connectivity. What the Honorable Prime Minister or the Minister all said that Uganda has done reasonably well in improving the road connectivity, the access to the electricity and other things in countries. So we need to move forward the regional connectivity between different countries, the roads and other things, so that the exports, the manufacturing exports of Uganda exports can be easily moved to the other neighboring countries. So that would be the road connectivity is the second element I wanted to actually highlight. The third one, leveraging the new technologies, ICT technologies, or the fourth industrial revolution technology, or the so-called the digital transformations. You have to actually position yourself to leverage those things. So that is my third point. I actually, on behalf of UNDP, as our resident representative said, we are actually working with the Ministry of Trade and Industries in supporting the ministries, taking forward how the country could actually improve its readiness to realize the maximum potential available from the Africa Free Continent trade, and that would be actually our priority item for the next few months with the ministry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You've heard the best practices, Dennis, which our implementation plan for this policy should really address, and they are quite clear and in line with what the minister and the prime minister and most of the conversations we've been having on industrial policy alluding to. I will now come to UDB in the interest of time. You know, UDB, you are on the lips of everybody. You have the money to finance industry. Recently, government told us they gave you 1 trillion shillings. But they gave you maybe half of it so far as we go forward. Now the question I want to say, I'm not going to ask you a lot of these other things, what are you doing, and Ugandans know. But what innovative financing options are you bringing on table as the Development Bank of Uganda at this critical time to finance industrialization, beyond waiting for government to capitalize you with a few? What innovative financing options do you have?
Thank you very much, Ramadan, for the opportunity to speak to that. I will also join the rest in congratulating the Minister and the team on developing these guidelines that will help us get to our destination on industrializing our country. So in terms of what innovative options UDB is bringing to change the game for financing of industrialization, we have a number of products that we're looking at, but we are looking at it through the value chain. You did point out that Uganda is primarily an agrarian country, and as a country, in our strategy, we do leverage on those areas that we are best at. But how do we also have the maximum impact on our community? So in terms of the agricultural output, how are we boosting that so that we have sustainable, quality, and adequate output, not only to improve the livelihood of the smallholder farmer, but to enable them have the capacity to regularly and sustainably supply the agro-industry up the chain. So in the agri-space, we have enhanced our farmer group models of financing. We are also looking at outgrow financing models where we do partner with the agro-processing or manufacturing entity to enable the players down the line, the small, medium enterprises and individuals down the line, access capital, cheap, affordable capital at favorable terms, reasonable tenors, good pricing. Then we are also looking at fintech solutions, which will help us do a couple of things. One is to profile the kind of either farmer or producer that we are targeting on the lower end of the spectrum. These help in terms of collecting the data and providing us with alternative credit scoring and assessment tools so that we can partner with the other entities. Because you remember, one of the things is we do not have a branch network, but we have strategic partnerships with with the other government-owned banks, Post Bank, probably with Pride soon, and these can access or can assess and fulfill the needs for the players down the chain, down in the market, the smaller amounts, less than the 100 million that UDB does. In terms of the other products, we're looking at how do we de-risk sectors like agriculture? How do we de-risk in terms of the level of investment, the level or amount of capital that is needed for manufacturing? So we are looking probably sometime down the line, as we continue to leverage on the amounts we were given. The benefits of having received that 455 billion is we are now a 1 trillion shilling bank. So leveraging on that, we can increase that 2 to 3 times to have up to 2 trillion shillings, which we can use to fund other projects. We can look more into credit guarantees. We can look into contract financing to enhance and boost our local content. We look at things like invoice discounting to facilitate trade and induce employment, for example, and to induce other innovations that will serve to enhance industry.
Maybe the big one, which manufacturers in this room might want to hear you answer. There are two issues I've heard which they are talking about. One is the interest rate. The cost itself in the development bank is still high, 12%. The second one is the cumbersome procedures, the paperwork, the procedure, the kind of checks that you put on them, that they also impose an implicit cost, the delay and so on to get. So those two, are they just making noise? Are they not serious issues? If they are, how are you intending to address them? How are you addressing them?
So in terms of the cost of borrowing, you will note that when we received the additional capitalization, we were able to drop that by up to 200 or so basis points. We set a standard now at 12%. What does that mean? If we are able to leverage or to access further capitalization, not only from the reflows, the people who will continue to repay their debt, but from taking advantage of things like our sustainability certification, of which we are one of the first DFIs on the continent to achieve. We have access to new products, blended finance, green finance, that come in at cheaper costs, and that cheaper cost can eventually be translated to the market. The other thing is, by taking on much of the risk up front, we, as a policy bank, can drive the rest of the sector to start to reduce the cost of borrowing.
Okay.
And one of the underlying things around the cost of borrowing is that it is a reflection of the price of trust in this market. And until, as a nation, we can learn to service our debts on time, to kind of look at alternative investment opportunities presented through, for example, UDC divesting once they are done, and we look at the buying shares in Teju, in the Soroti Fruit Plant, buying shares in Chira Motors as alternative investment vehicles. Then gradually, as we kind of go to the forefront of that, we could see the price of
just a moment, sorry for interjecting. The price of trust. The trust levels in the manufacturing sector are quite low.
It is generally, I'm speaking generally.
Okay.
So manufacturing has, I think they have a number of benefits in that it is something, it is clear-cut. It's a process that's clear-cut. And once you continue borrowing, once you improve your profile, then you may benefit from reduced cost of borrowing. The other thing
of procedures.
Yes, the other thing around the procedures. So the procedures really, it is the requirement. We have a duty of care to the citizens of this country who have entrusted us with this trillion shillings to make a value judgment, a value call. So as a nation, we did aspire to go for an enterprise-led or private sector-led growth strategy. So if you are an entity, a registered entity, these documents, or the bulk of the documents that people complain about, are available to you. You have your MEMATs, you have your trading license and the like. But these help us understand who you are, what you're mandated to do, and enable us to provide the correct solutions. So if we ask for your financial records, it is just to understand where you're coming from. And if you look at our high impact goals, for example, we want to increase industrial output to 4 trillion shillings. So where are you? How do we benchmark you? How do we know that the value we add to your entity is going to allow us to reach that goal? How do we know that for the sustainability of the bank, the institution, for the country, you will be able to service your debt?
Thank you.
Truth be told, I think these are standard documentations across banks.
Which ideally they should have.
Which ideally people should have. But
are you hearing that, Daniel? Yes. Ideally, you should have the documents that UDB is asking for, but when they ask for them, you say they are asking too many documents for so many days, and they are taking it very long to, to clear us so that we can get the money. I know the conversation can continue in that line, but I would like very quickly, we are ending this, very quickly the author of the policy. There is a particular issue which the minister talked about, and also in several studies we've been finding. Our industrialization agenda has tended to focus a lot on FDI, as opposed to mobilizing domestic capital to invest in our industry. We have left the domestic capital to go into what we call a dead capital, building houses, shopping malls, apartments, buying land, and somebody stands in the middle and says, all of this is mine. But that would have been invested in industry. Is this particular policy having any strategy, at least the strategy, its strategy? What is exactly is it doing to mobilize this domestic capital to be channeled through industry?
Thank you, moderator. I think on this one we need many partners, and number one is change the mindset. Right, as you have said, there is a lot of money, and where we direct it, there is a lot to say about it. So we noted this during the development of the policy, and we've decided to segment the number of players who are involved in this. For us as the ministry, we are going to engage people whom we think have money, and we want to start with the importers. Our friends from Kasita, they have made a lot of money and they are continuing. But we are now saying, please come and invest here. You have gone to China, you've seen how people are doing these things, buy the technologies, come here, and you will be supported.
Mr.
Moderator,
Dennis,
if you could have looked at the strategy.
Just a small interjection.
Yes.
Is that your strategy of attracting them,
Yes.
appealing to them,
Yes.
to change their mindset?
That is number one.
But if they are making more money in importing, then where you are calling them?
No, I was still coming.
Okay.
And actually, if
Please come quickly so that
members have gotten an opportunity to get the strategic plan, we have an annex which is looking at the commodities we have, the products you can make out of it. This we are starting with it. We want to show people out of maize, what is it that you can get? Out of cassava, what is it that you can get? And we are going further to show them the technologies, and we will be able to work with different partners to ensure that they are skilled and they are shown really if you are to invest in here, how much do you need? Because there are also a lot of risks of going to China and everywhere to do the importation. But also, industrial policy does not work alone. We also have to engage with our colleagues in the Ministry of Finance on the aspect of the policies that control the imports and the exports, to ensure that what you have just said, people can see that if I invest in manufacturing, I will be able to make a profit.
Thank you. Dr. Berundi, in 1 minute, there have been also voices that we are building factories as white elephants around the country, at least the public sector. Are you seeing this industrial policy ensuring that it guides the investment in industry, such that whatever money we are investing in these factories is going to be, informed by business, not necessarily what I don't want to say?
Thank you, moderator. I don't know what he didn't want to say, but yes, it's true, depending on the interpretation. For every intervention we go for, whether strategically has been guided by political leadership or it has been introduced by a private player, our key consideration is we do an investment appraisal. We do feasibility studies when it is when we realize that these are new investments that are coming up, to make sure that the business component guides the implementation. Now, we've also noted that yes, sometimes you may start a facility where the supply of raw materials is inadequate, for example. Okay? But again, from basic economics, also says law is very clear, supply can create its own demand. So sometimes once we see and recognize as government that this is a strategic entry point, okay, it is okay to go in and so that work on the demand for the inputs as well. So it's really a choice that we need to make. How strategic is the intervention? Can we create demand with this intervention? But at the moment, we do not have white elephants that are clearly visible. We had a challenge with the tea, and that is cleared in the Kigezi sub-region.
That's what UDC is doing, clearing all the white elephants. It's been a fantastic panel. I wish I could continue, but the time is actually not on our side. Please give a round of applause to Mr. Dennis Aneviona, who is the Commissioner, Industry and Technology at the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. He's on the extreme there. Dr. Patrick Birungi is the ED, Executive Director, Uganda Development Corporation, the investment arm of government. Mr. Daniel Birungi is the Executive Director of Uganda Manufacturers Association. Miss Veronica, the only lady on the panel, Namwanje Kavuma, is the ED of Uganda Small Scale Industries Association. I also have Dr. Tangavel Paranivo, who is a senior advisor at the UNDP. And also I have on the panel my good friend Samuel Edem Maitum, who is the Director Credit at Uganda Development Bank. Thank you very much. I remain Ramadan Govi, and I teach economics at Makerere University Business School.
We can do better than that, surely. Another round of applause. All right. Next time, rather than you're having issues, my brother, just say Palani. It's okay. Yeah, Palani will be just fine. I know you're all looking at me and thinking about lunch. Yes, lunch is there. But I was asked to ensure that there is also a vote of thanks, and we need to make some closing remarks. Honorable Minister and LC, you will be the only ones. Oh, LC, you're all right, fantastic. I was about to say, LC, you're the only one between us and lunch, but since now you've delegated your time to the Minister, so you added her a couple of more minutes. So allow me invite the Honorable Minister to come and make closing remarks. It is your celebration day, Honorable Minister. In other quarters, she's called Mama Bubu. And she did launch our domestic initiative on Buy Uganda, Build Uganda. So, Mama, please come and close this very exciting moment. And as she comes, Elsie, now that we've launched, there is a conversation on dissemination, stakeholder management and engagement as we drive, the uptake of the policy. So I will be hoping I am recruited into that group of people. Please come.
Thank you very much. You know, I had already reached the climax, so I hope I'll be able to be a bit useful. But anyway, I would like to thank all of you. Madame Setafua of UNDP. We have the idea of UNIDO. Officials from the private sector, CEOs of agencies, distinguished panel, which was here. I want to thank you very much. I'd like to thank all of you for bearing with us. You know, sometimes when we hold these conferences, people leave before you even close. But to see that all the tables are full in spite of the SOPs, anyway, they have been observed. We thank you very much for bearing with us. That shows the interest that you have in this particular sector. I want to thank all the people who have contributed in this venture. I'd already thanked them. And I hope you have got copies, a copy of the policy and a copy of the strategic plan. Our role now is to popularize this policy. And that will involve us going to the media. We must use the FMs. We must try also and translate some aspects of it, or at least the highlights, into local languages, so that people understand and own it. So those are some of the areas we're looking at. And also hold sessions. Now gatherings are a bit scarce due to COVID, but at least we'll try and utilize our colleagues in arms. These are the media people who are always with us. I cannot hesitate to thank the media fraternity. You know, these are the silent heroes that we don't mention. They always disseminate this information appropriately, and people understand it. But normally we don't talk about them, because you know very well that once we leave here, of course it's the media now who's going to take over. Because you can't go everywhere telling people, oh, I was here, I did this, I did that. So we want to thank them as well. So as we close the meeting, this session, I know we're going for a meal. I would like us to, it's especially the industrialists, to ensure that we take on apprentices. And I've always talked to Uma about it. That let's take on the youth as apprentices so that they can learn on the job, and that's so that they are able to either start, learn by example, emulate what you're doing, start projects of their own, but also work or continue or work elsewhere with the skills they've attained. Finally, the financial institutions. I listened to my son, Maitum. You need to have attractive, affordable, and accessible products for the small, for Uzia, for Veronica. Veronica is struggling with her team. She was trying to be very modest about it. But you find that all these people have got wonderful innovations. But they're stuck because they do not have, or they cannot access credit to start them. I know I talked about the capital upstairs, but the capital is coupled with capital as in finances. Our development partners, you're special. Thank you for traveling the journey with us. And we share it, we're still together. But they say, Even when you feed a baby, at one time the baby will start to walk, the baby will start to talk. They can't keep feeding us, breastfeeding us. We need to also take the mantle and move. I thank you so much. I wish you all the best. And in this sector, this might be my last speech. You never know what the future holds. But I think I've inculcated enough knowledge and skills in the team and the spirit because they say even the best dancer leaves the platform. So I've inculcated enough skills in my team, and you can see how powerful they are. You can see their products. You can see their contacts. I have my peers here. She'll take charge. And other political leaders as may arise. I thank you so much. I love you, beautiful people. And I thank you for listening to me. May God bless you.
Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Minister, that was a standing ovation for you and your passion for the sector. You may take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. We want to thank you for driving this conversation on industrialization. And I think from your statement, I picked the word might. So let us stay. I will underline might be. So, you know, none of us here is the appointing authority. You never know. So we want to thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. A colleague of mine just shared something that I thought was interesting, that in our primary schools, we basically developed numeracy and literacy, and then went to secondary school, and that was the stage where we developed our critical thinking and made decisions on what we wanted to do in university. And then we went to university, where that is where we had the skill for research and innovation. And so he concludes by saying, when you're done with the 3 stages of our education system, you're definitely coming out as an industrialist or an innovator. So we all are industrialists in our right. And I think we're all sitting on a skill that could be developed to speak to what we are actually discussing today. And so this policy affects every single Ugandan here, and those of you who are here, but of course those watching us at home and those listening and joining us on other platforms. So I want to thank you all for this great conversation. Those who joined us via Zoom, we want to thank you so much for being part of this conversation. As you go away, please do make sure you've gone with a copy of your policy. We have shared a copy. It's part of your takeaway pack. We've also made sure that since some of us know the biggest challenge Ugandans have is reading, we have an abridged version of the policy. So you cannot give an excuse that you couldn't read the entire document. So you also have the abridged version of the policy with you. So please do share and continue this conversation using our hashtag NIPUganda2020. So on behalf of the Ministry of Trade and on behalf of UNDP, I want to thank you all. Please continue to observe the COVID-19 SOPs. The Indian variant is here, and this is even worse, especially for the young people who thought COVID was just, an excuse for adults to hide their faces. And so this is very critical for those of you watching, that if you can and you're among the category groups that are already being vaccinated, please go get your vaccine. And if you can, please stay away, from the naysayers and observe the SOPs. You're protecting yourself and your close friends and family. So I want to thank you all. Lunch is being served, and we are waiting for you upstairs. As you get out, the ushers will lead you to our serving areas. We want to thank you all, and we want to congratulate the ministry on this launch. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Has anyone seen Bob? Over here!
How did you get in there?
With my Airtel Money MasterCard.
But you don't even have a bank account.
Well, it's not a card. It's virtual, so no plastic, and it's safer.
But what are you doing there?
I want to buy Nancy a birthday gift, book my flight tickets, renew my Big Click subscription, and order